it's really easy to find a contractor that is maybe cheaper than some other ones, but they could be cheaper for many reasons. One of which they can go through stuff way quicker at not as quality as what some other ones may do, may not spend the money on the materials, the quality type materials that you need. Mm-hmm. So it can be attractive to find, hey, let me get 4 or 5 bids from contractors and just go with the cheapest one. Where at the end of the day, that's not necessarily maybe the best route to go when you can maybe find somebody that is a little bit more expensive, but you've talked to their references that they've given you, you've checked on their job sites in the past, and they keep job sites clean. The references you've talked to said they've kept on time and on budget, and going with that more expensive contractor, honestly, majority of the time is probably the route to go.
You should always go and check work, 100%. You should always do it no matter how much you trust the individual, because it's your property. No one cares as much as you will.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's the baseline comment, right?
And if you find a contractor that cares as much as you do, that's worth its weight in gold for sure.
100%. So, all right, how we doing, my friend? Hey.
Are you Adam?
Yeah, this is it. Good evening. Good morning.
Good
to all of our Asian listeners.
Yes.
It's evening our time, but morning in Asia. It's almost like time travel.
You ever done time travel before?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. I've left Asia on one day at a certain time, and I've come back at an earlier time. That wow seems like time travel to me.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, another way I've time traveled is when I've been drinking.
That happens.
Yeah. And all of a sudden I wake up the next day and like, man, I didn't remember the last 12 hours. That is time travel as well.
Is that time traveling?
I call it time travel. Yeah. It's a nice version of blacking out. I went time traveling last night. It wasn't crazy.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I defied science.
But did you?
Yeah, I time traveled. Exactly.
Okay, bud.
So we might as well get the elephant out of the room. I hit my head.
What?
It's Harry Potter scar. Instead of vertical, I'm more horizontal Harry Potter. So I feel slightly like a Ron Weasley. And I thought we should put it out to our listeners that I hit my head on a shower.
I'm just looking at this huge, dude, it's huge thing on your forehead.
We are talking about contractors. What do you want to talk about with them?
Finding contractors, working with contractors. Sure. They start to become a huge part of your business after a while. And when you're newer into real estate investing, sometimes you don't realize how big of a part of the overall game plan contractors are. So yeah, we'll talk through a few different bullet points on how to work with contractors, how to find contractors, coming up with scope of works, things that we've been through, trials and tribulations. So
I think even just the idea of going from, hey, this property looks like dog shit, to how do I get it to over here? And initially it seems like this huge mountain to climb. And when you have the right contractor in place, actually that really starts to alleviate a lot of concerns. They're the ones with the knowledge and understanding, and you have the vision of where you want to get to. And facilitating that is usually through just a good contractor. And to be fair, there's a lot of bad ones out there.
Ton of shitty ones.
And you hear all of the horror stories.
Garbage.
But the minute that you find the right one and the key component of that business aspect, it just makes the world of difference. And so communicating that to wherever you are in your investor journey, from let's say your first property all the way through to hundreds of properties, that contractor piece is an absolute critical piece. So
yeah, for sure. Like I mentioned, they become a really big part of the business that you don't think about up front. Then all of a sudden it's like a year later, you guys are still working together. 2 years later, you guys are still together. Then you really realize it's like, oh shit, this guy, he's a big part of the team and a big part of what we going on. He's a big part of why we can buy, or we can buy certain assets and do these certain deals, is because we have this person in place to be able to help us facilitate all that.
Yeah, absolutely. It takes the huge piece of the puzzle. You look at different pieces of the puzzle, finding the deal, analyzing the deal, underwriting, all of that piece. That's, the front end. But then second piece is executing on your overall strategy that who is going to help you? Unless you're super handy, which I would say most people don't want to necessarily take on that level of involvement from a contractor. Finding that right piece of the puzzle is just the world of difference.
Yeah.
People that know you, know the way you like to work, and what your expectations are as well was a big point of that.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's great to be able to do stuff on your own and be able to be handy, but to scale up and with your rental portfolio flips, whatever you're doing, you have to have that contractor in place. You yourself can only do so much, so that contractor piece is super critical.
Yeah, they got their team. They're going to come in and facilitate it quickly, efficiently, effectively.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess, for starters, what are some of the key components of this? Maybe we look at top 10 really aspects of finding and working with a good contractor.
Really finding a contractor is finding out, getting referrals first and foremost from colleagues, other investors that Facebook is a great resource, Instagram is a great resource. Places where you've seen people talking about other contractors, referring other contractors out, and then vetting those guys. Vetting those guys is going in and checking on their jobs that they've done in the past, getting referrals to, again, the people that they've worked for, talking with those people that they've worked for, find out if they met deadlines, if they met budgets, things like that.
Yeah.
A big thing, just getting on the same page, like you said earlier, with expectations about the exact scope that's going to be done, expectations on timeline, expectations specifically on quality. And there is a certain component to doing rehabs on real estate where you need to know some basics on certain things, how they're done. Because it's really easy to find a contractor that is maybe cheaper than some other ones, but they could be cheaper for many reasons, one of which they can go through stuff way quicker at not as quality as what some other ones may do, may not spend the money on the materials, the quality type materials that you need. Mm-hmm. So it can be attractive to find, hey, let me get 4 or 5 bids from contractors and just go with the cheapest one. Where at the end of the day, that's not necessarily maybe the best route to go, when you can maybe find somebody that is a little bit more expensive, but you've talked to their references that they've given you, you've checked on their job sites in the past, and they keep job sites clean. The references you've talked to said they've kept on time and on budget, and going with that more expensive contractor, honestly, majority of the time is probably the route to go. So I would say up front, again, diving into references, finding them from referrals, from people that have actually used them, verifying more references from them, and visiting the actual jobs that they've done is a huge step in the right direction and finding somebody decent to work with.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. You touched on it a little bit, but getting multiple bids is an important piece of that too. I think naturally people get a little lazy, and you end up with, hey, I got one in, this guy or gal seems good. They seem like they are knowledgeable and going to be able to execute on what they're able to do.
And they answer the phone. The bar for good contractors is so low, unfortunately, to where somebody giving you a call back, they skyrocket to the top of the list. So beyond them just responding, going into what you said is critical. Yeah.
And it took you, let's say, an hour of your time, depending on how big of the scope or whatever, but it took a decent amount of time to communicate, walk through the process, what you want to get done, all the level of details, all of those things, right? It takes some time and energy on your part. You got to go do it again. You got to go out and find other people, unless this is a contractor that you've already worked with. Again, back to the importance of building your team. If you have a contractor that you like, is reasonable, always going to bid right, maybe that starts to alleviate the concern of getting 5 different bids, 3 different bids. Like at the onset, at the beginning, as you're building out your team, yeah, you should go find the right team. But now it starts to be, okay, I'm going to keep feeding this person business because I know they're going to do a good job. They know what we like, and they're going to do it at an effective price.
Yeah, and after a while too, after talking with so many different contractors and doing actual projects, you start to learn what stuff costs. So yeah, after a while, it's not necessarily about, hey, price is the first objective. That's kind of the main criteria I'm using. It's more about, okay, I know what this stuff's going to, ballpark price of what this stuff's going to cost. So I know what these prices should be from the contractors. So let me more focus on, hey, if you're in the ballpark of what I'm thinking price wise.
Yeah.
Let's really dig into, hey, timeframes on when you can do stuff, how you're going to do stuff, and the quality aspect. Because again, you get somebody in there and you're spending a bunch of money to get this work done. You want to make sure it's done the right way. Otherwise, if you're holding it as a rental, let's say, for example, a tenant moves in, you're coming back and you're spending extra money on doing stuff the right way because they didn't do certain things plumbing wise or electrical wise, and now when a tenant moves in, they don't have hot water, or the light switch for their bedroom doesn't work.
Yeah.
Or we were just at a property the other day where bathroom switches didn't work in one of the main bathrooms. So to be able to go in and have somebody that does quality stuff is, again, far more important than really being price conscious after a while.
Yeah, it's hard to always quantify up front, but you think about your time that went through the property, again, digging into all the little variables, everything that, hey, did I check this? Is this done right? Whereas if you're confident and comfortable with the individual, it's a breeze through, and you should always go and check work. 100%. You should always do it, no matter how much you trust the individual, because it's your property. No one cares as much as you will.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's the baseline comment, right?
And if you find a contractor that cares as much as you do, that's worth its weight in gold for sure.
100%. So, but everybody makes mistakes, the good ones and the bad ones, right? So getting through those properties, but then going back to the idea of, hey, I saved whatever it might be, $300, $500, $1,000, whatever it is. But how much time did it take you to now go back through the property, communicate what you need? Hey, I just have this tenant moving in a couple of days. I need this done now. Yeah. And the stress level, the energy, and what's your time worth is not always easy to quantify, but it's an important metric that not all people sort of gauge and understand, especially on the onset when you're setting up, hey, this person's $1,000 cheaper. Well, really dig in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads into a little bit about overall communication with contractors, and really also part of that communication is setting deadlines and expectations on those deadlines.
Yeah.
If you want to chat a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And understanding upfront of what your expectations are, how you expect this project to go, and also in particular, what the different items are to get done is really an important piece, whether that's through contractor or any really type of project, right?
Anything.
Somebody that is doing the work for you should have really a clear statement of work, a clear understanding of expectations. These are the things I need done, and this is how I want it done, is really an important way to communicate. And then how long is it going to take? And let's get an agreement, alignment, and that's what we're all driving toward. Without some of those pieces, without communicating that up front, you might have expected, hey, this is going to be done in a week. However, your contractor might have expected this done in a month. And that could be a contractor even just building a damn website, to be frank. But like, you really got to have a clear communication channel with your contractors. And this is what our expectation is. How long do you think this is going to take? All right, it's going to be a month. And I think contractors, construction in general, historically has not held true to a lot of timelines. So that timeline piece and clear expectations really is an important variable and something that you should really drive home. You say you're going to be doing it in a month. All right, in 2 weeks, how are we doing? Are we halfway done? Hey, are we still tracking on a month? A month is what we talked about. We're still planning on a month. A week out, hey, we're going to be done in another week, right? And if anything pops up along the way, they know. On the worst thing for a project, and one of my pet peeves personally is the fact of, hey, it's done in a month, and all of a sudden, like the day before, hey, it's going to be another 3 weeks. Well, you knew that 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And you didn't want to communicate it to me. Why did that not happen? Why did we not have that conversation at that point? And that is something that really bothers me. Hey, this thing didn't arrive, it didn't ship in time, or didn't come. Well, you knew that. You knew that it was a week or two ago, right?
Yeah.
And if you didn't, what are you doing with your business? Like, how did you not know that? Yeah. That's also concerning to you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think overall too, you have the overall deadline. Hey, let's get this project done by this time. Mm-hmm. But then you also have, hey, in this project, we're going to be doing drywall, we're going to be doing plumbing, we're going to be doing electrical. And one thing I've learned to really keep things on track, actually two things I was going to bring up is one, having a weekly meeting with your contractor, seeing how things are going. Like you said earlier, doing random pop-ins on the project to see how things are going, but at bare minimum, doing at least one time a week, one-on-one with your contractor, going over that job and seeing how things are going so you're on the same page.
And ideally in person.
In person.
Ideally, you're walking the job site with them. And
Absolutely.
saying, hey,
stuff out.
This is what we expected at this point. I see it's not done.
Yeah. And then second part is having those deadlines for each one of those trades. Because it's easy, like you said a second ago, say, hey, here's the overall deadline of the project. And then you're a week out and you see all this stuff's not done, but they keep reassuring you. It's like, oh yeah, we're going to be done in a week. Where if you had that stuff broken down by each trade more or less, then you can, and you're doing the weekly meetings, then you can really track, hey, we still have this, and this to do. They're supposed to be done by these time frames, and we're not going to meet this overall time frame. So you can have the discussion a lot earlier in the process about the overall deadline on something if you're tracking it by trades and doing those weekly meetings with the contractor.
Absolutely. And hey, have you talked to the drywall guy because the plumbing is not done interior? And they're going to show up tomorrow. Have you guys talked to the fact that this is actually going to be 3 days out, and you're sort of that and you're that checks and balances, which is what you should be as well. But you really cannot assume that everything's being taken care of, because there's a lot of project management pieces to it. And at the beginning, we communicated that there are a lot of poor construction management individuals. The stories are endless. People just not showing up to finish the end of the job. There's this, there's that. I think there's a lot of ways to be able to protect yourself in those scenarios. So for starters, timeline, scope of work, all of that gets cemented with a formal legal contract.
A written contract,
Everything needs to be in contract form. I don't care how well you know that individual. It could be your best friend that's a contractor. Put it in writing, communicate everything up front, and that lays the groundwork for everybody on the same page. And legal groundwork, hopefully no one ever needs it, but unfortunately you never need it until you need it. Right? There has been multiple times where in our own real estate history that we're like, we'll never need it, but obviously we have the contracts in place and everything that protects us. And then we've pulled back on it and be like, well, what does the contract say? Right? That's the first thing. So always have written communication. Everybody signs on for it, and this is what is going to get done.
Like you said, it goes a long ways. You don't need it until you need it, and it's so easy up front when you're meeting new contractors. It's kind of like you're dating each other to begin with. Like you're telling each other what you want to hear, and everything's all warm and fuzzy, and all of a sudden the project gets started, and a week or two later, things are going as expected. Then you're like, hey, no, we talked about this, and the contractor's like, no, I remember this conversation a completely different way. And been through that multiple times. So having something in writing is a huge help to make sure that overall process goes as smooth as possible. And there's always going to be stuff that comes up that's not necessarily in the contract itself, but at least that lays a foundation for expectations. And expectations is really one of the big things that you have to make sure you're on the same page with your contractor with.
So how do you, with those expectations and written contract in play, statement of work, how do you monitor the progress, the quality? What are those systems and processes that you have in place to be able to have those checks and balances, have those check-ins, things like that?
Yeah, it's again, going back to the weekly meetings and then checking in on the job site. So it's easy to find a really good contractor and do the weekly meetings, do the things you're supposed to be doing, and not visit the job site because you're doing the weekly meetings, things are moving smooth, they're meeting deadlines, things like that, everything's all good. So you just assume that the deadlines they're meeting in regards to the scope of work that they're doing is the right scope of work and they're doing the stuff that you want.
Sure.
So without you actually getting your eyes on the project, you really don't know if it's being done by the deadline or if it's being done to the standards that you want. So even with a contractor you've worked with for a long time, it's still important to visit job sites because there's certain little things that will pop out to you immediately that maybe the contractor doesn't notice right away, or they may notice later down the road, But since it's down the road, now they have to go back and do these other things in order to fix this one thing that if they would have caught it up front would have been a easier fix. So
Yeah.
I think until you have a very well established relationship with your contractor and they meet certain expectations about, for me personally, sending videos, sending pictures, certain picture angles. When you tell a contractor to take a picture, it's mind blowing how bad pictures can be. I don't get it. Like I'm not a professional photographer, but anytime I take a picture, I think I'm taking a good picture. I put it in wide angle. I make sure the focus is on. It's of everything I need, and it's easy. But when you have a contractor, not all of them, when you have some contractors take a picture, it's like zoomed in on this little part that has nothing to do with the picture that you wanted.
Yeah.
Then it becomes a pain in the balls. So again, it's important if you're there in the same state, same city, whatever, as your project, to visit it. If you're virtual, having videos and the right photos go a long way, and staying on top of it in regards to saying, hey, if we're meeting these certain deadlines, I need these certain pictures by these deadlines to verify that's done. It's easy for those deadlines to be hit and the contractor says, yeah, we're good. And hey, I'll get you photos. And then those photos never come. So really staying on top of, one, doing the walkthroughs if you're there, but then two, making sure you're getting all those photos and videos on a regular basis. Because if you're taking down drywall and you're doing some plumbing, doing some electrical, things like that, and once you put the drywall back up, you have no idea what's behind that drywall. You're hoping once you turn on the water that there's not water leaking behind the wall. You're hoping you turn on a light switch and the light actually turns on, to where if you can get some pictures or you're there visiting the property while that drywall is off and they've just finished the plumbing, they've just finished electrical, it's a lot easier to be able to catch some of those potential issues up front.
Absolutely, yeah. The way you're talking, obviously the ability and beauty of technology now, you don't necessarily have to be present. It's wonderful to be present and just show up and talk face to face. But the fact is that you don't always have to be that way anymore. And one of the beauties of real estate is that you don't have to be in the same state. I live in San Diego. Most of our property is in the Midwest, Omaha, Nebraska. We're in Lincoln today. We have property in Iowa, but I'm not there. But the fact is that you can have a FaceTime video now, and hey, show me this, and then you can go and check in. The cameras are good. The Wi-Fi connection is good to the point that you can actually see and understand what the job site looks like, and that could be a 20-minute conversation, a 20-minute check-in. And all of a sudden now you're caught up with the building without actually being present and hopping on a plane or wherever you need to be. So that technology piece is amazing, and leverage it.
Yeah, absolutely. FaceTime, I don't know what they call it on Androids. I don't know why people buy Androids to begin with.
But shout out to Apple for the new one.
Yeah, Apple, some phones, okay? Or computers. I'll take a computer. But yeah, with FaceTime, dude, that's a game changer. Because again, going back to the shitty photos that they can take, even videos sometimes can't be the best, could be blurry, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Doing the FaceTime, it's like, hey, let's go look at this. And they scan it, and you can say, hey, no, let's zoom in on this, or hey, I caught this, or whatever. But with FaceTime, yeah, like you said, you can do stuff virtually really anywhere, as long as you have that level of comfort, one, with your contractor, and then two, again, I think that goes back into, you need to have a little bit of knowledge on construction and what's right, what's wrong. Not saying you need really in-depth knowledge on it, but you have to have a basic knowledge of stuff.
And maybe that first flip or renovation or whatever it is, that is how you got your knowledge.
Absolutely.
You don't have to be having build things forever and that's your baseline knowledge. It's, look, I'm going to do this first deal and I'm going to learn.
Yeah.
And from there, I recognize that maybe there's some things that I'm not doing at the most optimal level. But the fact is I just learned a crap ton from this first deal, and second deal is going to be better.
Yeah, we talked about that briefly earlier off camera. There's a certain deal that we're analyzing to where it'd be our first deal in that niche. And we're like, hey, the numbers don't look the best, but honestly, if we can break even on this guy and it's something that we'd hold on to as a rental. It's like, hey, if we break even on this and we don't cash flow, it's okay, because there's a ton of value in this. Is our first one that we're doing. Yeah. We're going to learn a ton of stuff from it. And until you actually dig into something and you bring it on with you saying, hey, for me, what got brought to mind first was when I was 15, 16, we bought our first house as a flip. Me and my brother in Lincoln bought a house as a flip. And even though my dad was in construction, my whole entire family on my dad's side was in construction. I grew up in construction, building custom homes with my dad, things like that. Until I got into that home and did all that work on myself, did some of the framing on my own. I fucked up on a lot of stuff, messed up on a lot of stuff. But by me doing it, that's how I learned what's right and what's wrong. And then again, as you do more projects, not necessarily on your own, but some on your own, but as you start to work with more and more contractors, you start to really understand stuff more, and stuff starts to become a lot more common sense. But until you take on that first project and or you're doing that rehab on your own, and you may not know that much about construction up front, you'll learn a ton. And there's a lot of value in that. So let's say you get into a deal and you flip it and you don't make any money, but yet you learn all that construction piece or a big chunk of it, things like that. That's a huge value in itself.
Sure.
To where that, hey, it's a successful deal. It's not a shit deal. It's actually good.
Yeah. Would recommend making money though. Yeah, that's usually the preferred.
Usually,
That's nice.
Yeah, that's good.
I guess to kind of finish out then, any key takeaways, any real high level bullet points around finding contractors and maintaining the relationships with them?
Yeah, kind of a random one that comes to mind is just doing a deal. This is kind of off subject, but analysis paralysis can kill people where they just study, just don't do a deal. A lot of things that have come up in this brief conversation, it's like, just do a deal. And for me, I messed up on lots of deals up front. Not saying lots of deals for the deal overall, but different aspects of that deal I messed up on. But I didn't know until I got into the deal, messed up on it, and hey, wow, I learned this, and now you can go and implement that on further things. So again, something super random. Analysis process will kill you. Just doing a deal will go a long, long ways in building confidence and knowledge and whatnot.
Sure.
What about you? What's one that stood out?
You went just sort of off the Richter with that one of just sort of like analysis paralysis and not talking about contractors. So I'll go back to contractors here. Man, I think the big piece of just real estate investing in general is having workmanship and contractors that you know, you like, you trust. That is a big piece of the puzzle. So finding that starts to take out one of the big puzzle pieces to real estate investing. And that is something that I want to encourage all, that you don't have to be a real estate expert of construction, that you got to understand every nuance. You want that as a piece of your team, and you can lean on them to ask, to advise, hey, what's the right way to do this? Or, hey, I want to do this. Is this, and hey, these are you want your contractor to just come to the table and say, hey, this is what's code, this is what's right, this is what you need to do, this is what I would recommend, things like that. That's the type of teammate that you want. And so having that puzzle piece really opens the doors for expansion. It really opens up the avenue of being able to explore more deals, because without it, you're really struggling to get things done.
Absolutely. And
no, that's one of my takes.
Some that just stood out where you said somebody you like to work with.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It goes along.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You like to work with, and they care. Once they care, that changes the game on a lot of stuff. And somebody that cares, you know what that means? It means they're a good human.
Yeah.
Good humans.
Yeah.
It's a thing that is brought up a lot in my podcast, is just being a good human.
Be a good human.
At the end of the day. So,
and do deals with people that you like doing deals with. If you're going to be in the trenches with somebody, and there's going to be things that will not go right. Absolutely. There are things that will fall on their face. So like, man, I got in here and there's mold throughout the whole unit. I didn't realize that. Well, they didn't realize it either. And let's go solve the problem. Focus on the problem. You're on the same team. Let's go figure it out. Right.
Yeah. So to really sum it up, just be a good human.
Yeah. Be a good human.
It's just a deal sum it. Yeah.
Be a good people.
Okay.
Thank y'all.
Bye. Good job.
Find a good contractor.